Have you or someone you know been charged or convicted with a crime, and you're wondering, what sentence am I going to get? Well, there are a number of factors that go into determining what your ultimate sentence is going to be in a state criminal case, and I'm about to break all that down right now. Hi, I'm Daniel M. Rosenberg. I'm a criminal defense attorney and the founding partner of Rosenberg Parent Associates. It is also my personal goal and passion to provide information and education to individuals before they become involved and entrenched in the system. And a question that I constantly get is relating to either clients or friends of clients with criminal charges, and they're wondering, how does this story end? What am I going to get? Am I going to go to prison? Am I going to get probation? Am I going to get something else? If I agree to a sentence, can I do better at sentencing? Can I do worse at sentencing? Well, here's everything you need to know. The first thing is we have to talk about what the sentencing process is. And the sentencing process in New Jersey starts with a finding of guilt. And a finding of guilt can either be by way of a plea, where you admit guilt, or it can be after a trial where there's ultimately a conviction. And then you go before a sentencing judge. Now, whether it's a guilty plea or a guilty finding by either a judge or a jury, a sentencing date must be scheduled. And that's typically between 4 and 6 weeks after the guilty finding. Now, the reason for that delay is the court must prepare for sentencing, and in order to do that, the defendant must be evaluated for their pre-sentence report. The defendant must participate in a pre-sentence interview. At sentencing, arguments are presented to the court, and those are arguments presented not only by the state, but also by the defense. After presentations are made by both sides, and the defendant is given the opportunity to address the court, the judge then will impose sentence. So now that you know what the sentencing process is, what exactly goes into determining what ultimate sentence you are going to get? Well, there are a number of things. More specifically, there's a statute in the state of New Jersey that lays out a number of aggravating factors. And there are 15 enumerated aggravating factors, and they include whether or not you have a prior criminal history, whether or not this was a particularly violent offense, whether the defendant's conduct caused or threatened serious bodily injury, whether or not the victim in the crime was 60 years of age or older. In addition to aggravating factors, the judge must consider mitigating factors. And there are 14 enumerated mitigating factors in the code as well. And that includes a lack of criminal history, that the defendant's conduct did not threaten or cause serious harm, and that the defendant may have acted under strong provocation. There's also the defendant's willingness to cooperate or work with law enforcement. The court ultimately hears arguments on the aggravating factors and mitigating factors, and then makes a legal finding of what aggravating factors apply and what mitigating factors apply. The court then needs to weigh these findings. That legal analysis must be completed before the judge imposes sentence. Now, the analysis is very significant, and the reason is that will ultimately determine what your sentence is. In addition to the weighing of the aggravating and mitigating factors, the degree of crime is going to determine what your sentence is. By way of example, if you were convicted of a crime of the second degree, you're looking at between 5 and 10 years in New Jersey State Prison. So that'll give you an idea of what your sentencing range will be. If the sentence is part of a plea agreement, that means that there is an agreement where you indicate what the state and the defense agree is the appropriate sentence. That is presented to the court, and the court ultimately must decide whether or not that is appropriate under the circumstances. So now that you know the factors that go into determining what your sentence is going to be, what happens if you get sentenced and you don't agree with the sentence? Well, your options are going to depend heavily on how this matter was brought before the court. If you go to trial and are found guilty, you go in front of the judge then imposes a sentence. If you don't agree with that sentence, you have 45 days to file an appeal. And you essentially have two significant arguments. And the first is an illegal sentence. If you don't have an illegal sentence, your next argument is that the judge abused his or her discretion. It's a very significant and difficult hurdle to overcome. So if your guilty finding is presented to the court by way of a plea, your ability to get out of that sentence is really going to depend on what the plea says and what sentence you ultimately received. The short version is, if you get what you agreed to or less, it's going to be extremely difficult to get out of your plea. By way of example, you enter a plea, you agree to a 3-year state prison sentence. If you get 3 years of state prison, the law states that that is a presumptively valid sentence. It's going to be very difficult to get out of that. But the upside is you can argue to the court that you shouldn't get 3 years even though you agreed to it. You should get 1.5 years. And if the judge agrees with you and gives you 1.5 years, there's nothing the state can do to unring that bell. Now, what if you agree to a 3-year sentence and the judge gives you more than 3 years? At that point, you have the ability to take back your guilty plea. Anything you said in furtherance of that guilty plea can't be used against you, and you're able to start anew. That's a very significant benefit when we're talking about sentencing in state court in New Jersey. So if you or someone you know has been charged or convicted of a crime in New Jersey and you have questions about sentencing, please feel free to contact our office. We're happy to help. We'll take the time we need to evaluate your situation and give you blunt and candid advice. And if you like the contents of this video, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if there's a question or situation you'd like to know more about, please contact our office or leave a comment below. I'd love to hear about it. We are criminal trial attorneys. We have your back. That's what we do.